We are live. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
Blake, I'm just getting this one important note in, and we're going to move past it very quickly. I understand how far behind I am in the picks. I'm not going to address it later, and all I'm going to say is that we've got a couple weeks remaining, and hopefully that there's enough movement during championship weekend that I can reclaim the lead. That's all I'm going to say. I'm getting ahead of it now. I don't want to hear it. Hopefully I can get back into this.
Who leads, and then by how many games?
It's not me. I'm not going to say it's you. It's not me. That's all I'm giving you.
I got to be real with you, buddy. You're going to have to start making some adjustments. Can I tell you why? Because ever since I came up to New York and beat you in NCAA football,
no,
you have not been able to adjust. I think that I am in your head. I think that you are flustered, and I don't think that you're making adjustments. You're kind of like my favorite team, LSU, Brian Kelly. You can't make adjustments.
I beat you last year, and you claim that apparently that wasn't, you let me, in which I don't believe. I won last year. You were bound to come back. I applaud your efforts that you've improved this much and you're making better picks, but I will eventually get my get back. We'll see when that is. Maybe it's this season. Maybe it's not till next year. But I don't want to hear that you keep giving that away, that you handed it to me last year.
I give the credit to not drinking alcohol during the entire season, right? Like I have not had a drink other than me and my wife going out to have like a glass of wine or something like that. That's what I attributed to. You know, my worst week was the week that I had some alcohol. So I think it's been me being, you need to get me drunk. That's what you need to do.
You know what the irony of this is? And I know that we're here to actually talk college football, but it's the flip for me because I haven't been drinking. And the weeks that I was doing the best on this show, and also when I was in the lead, and also my betting picks were doing the best throughout parts of the season, it was when I was drinking the most. Now that I think about it, I think I need to flip it. I need to start drinking more again.
Well, maybe you do. But we'll talk about our Week 12 picks. Yeah. Joe and I have been on a little bit of a heater here, man. I mean, look, all I'm going to say is that I pick games better than Nick Saban. I'm going to continue to say that.
What's his record?
Oh, buddy, he's hovering around 50%. Your boy's at like 75%. So I'm not saying Nick is being lazy on his picks, but I know more football than Nick Saban is how I would adjust it. If I should probably put that in my bio. Everyone that doesn't understand sarcasm, I hope you really, really know that is a lot of sarcasm there. But Joe, we'll go through our Week 12 picks here, the 10 games that we have slated for the week. We'll also give our Week 12 power rankings. I have a team pretty high that I don't think that you're going to agree with. I know that you're not going to agree with them. But nevertheless, we'll go through our Week 12 power rankings. But we got to start off tonight's show by the breaking news that's out there by Jeremy Fowler of ESPN saying that Dan Campbell's name has been a lot of interest.
Dan Lanning. You said Campbell. You said Dan Campbell. Dan Lanning.
See, there I go again. Dan Lanning's name, the Oregon head coach, his name is circling in NFL circles to possibly be someone targeted for these NFL vacancies. Your thoughts?
It makes a lot of sense because Dan Lanning has been a tremendous riser throughout this process. And you always wonder to yourself, like, what's that next step for a guy like Dan Lanning that has been so successful and has turned a program like Oregon that has been good, but hasn't reached that upper echelon. They are in the national championship conversation. They're deservedly the number one team in the country after the huge win that they had against Ohio State. With that in mind, one, I don't think that he does leave. And two, I don't think that he should leave, especially a head coach who has only been leading his program for a very short period of time. Matt Rule, Urban Meyer, two of the most recent guys that have left. Jim Harbaugh is being successful right now because he was in the NFL before that. Those two other options did not work out in the NFL. Lanning should stay. It's better off for his career in the long term. But most importantly, I don't think he's going to leave. I think that his actions, the way that he handled the Alabama situation, Blake, is an indicator that he is not going to jump ship. He is here to try and build this thing and win a national championship.
I don't think Dan was necessarily offered. I mean, if you go back through the lineage of Kalen DeBoer, he was the first one offered and he took the job. I don't disagree there. let me just say this. I agree with you that Dan, number one, not only do I think that Dan Lanning's not going to go to the NFL, I don't think that he should, okay? But there needs to be something that's thrown out there. Joe, with the playoffs the way that they are, okay, and the way the NFL season works, NFL teams don't have to make a decision on who their head coach is until January, February. Like late January, early February. So this man could literally go through an entire playoff run, win a national title, and then they start coming after him pretty heavy. I would be shocked if he doesn't take a phone call and hears people out. You always hear people out. Like let's not be naive, but I think Dan is building a juggernaut at Oregon. I think that it would be, I don't want to say foolish, Joe, because look, man, I mean, no telling how much money he would make. I don't know. I don't know his aspirations. We would have to ask him. I would say this, not trying to be political at all. And you know that I'm not that guy. He was asked like a really weird political question this week or 2 weeks ago. And yeah, it was like somebody asked him about, what do you say to Trump supporters, X, Y, and Z? And he's like, look, man, I'm here to coach football. All I am saying here is I don't think he leaves Oregon, okay? Like I at all. I don't think that he should. But I do think he's going to hear people out here. I mean, he's recruiting too well. He's got the number one team in the nation. And if you're an Oregon fan, you should be flattered. You should 100% be flattered that the NFL, the creme de la creme, is coming after your head coach. And this is back-to-back years that his name's been in these circles. So, Joe, I don't know. The only team that I would be worried about at the current moment, though, would be Dallas. I mean, because Jerry will spend money. Now, I don't think of all the picks that Jerry could have, I don't think Dan would be his first pick. But there's no telling what Jerry would do.
The only thing with that is I think that if Dan Lanning were to take an opportunity, I just don't know if he would. I actually think this Dallas job sucks. I'm just going to jump to what I'm trying to say here. I think the Dallas job is terrible. I think that it is a difficult lose-lose situation because you're forced to do everything that Jerry Jones expects from you, and it has to go his way. We know that these coaches, since the last time that they were like really, truly Super Bowl relevant, they have not been able to produce success because of it. And then players constantly complain about all the stupid tours that happen all the time with there. So I would hope that Dan Lanning is smart enough to see all that and not just jump because it's a big opportunity and to be coaching the biggest franchise in all of sports. Well, it's going to end badly.
Here's the thing, though, Joe. Imagine making the same money and not having to be worried about recruiting an NIL.
Well, I don't know. That's the thing why I don't think it makes sense because we don't really know what Dan Lanning's
be a problem for Dan. I mean, Dan's out there all the time, right? I mean, it's not a problem for him.
That was what I was going to say is that like he's not one of those coaches who's like outwardly vocal that he hates the transfer portal, that he hates recruiting. He's killing it right now in both avenues. So I would argue that it doesn't really make sense for why he would want to jump and leave. The only coach who currently I think would consider doing that would be Kirby Smart because there's been some tumultuous situations in the past year that it might be best for him to separate himself from Georgia and to move on and take that NFL opportunity.
That ain't happening.
You don't think so?
No, that ain't happening. I mean, because, dude, that's like saying, Joe, that's like you being the head coach of Notre Dame and you leaving. That's like me being the head coach of LSU and me leaving. It's just not,
Well, but Steve Spurrier left when he was at Florida.
Yeah, but that's a whole different thing.
He was there for probably longer.
Yeah, he was there for much longer, and maybe Kirby will. In reference to Dan, look, he's got a juggernaut. He would be. I do think it would be foolish for him to leave. But
yeah, I agree.
Again, who are these teams that are asking? Like Joe, you would probably know better than I. I don't really watch the NFL. What are some of the teams that will have coaching vacancies?
Giants potentially, the Jets we know have an opening, the Bears potentially. So like the Bears are really, really promising job for a coach like Dan Lanning because you've got Caleb Williams, you got the offense and all that.
There's no way Dan would put himself with Caleb Williams. There's no way.
I don't think that. I think most coaches look at that as a tremendous opportunity to have a young quarterback that's already got a pretty good roster that just needs a little bit of refinement.
Y'all already missed. Jaden Daniels was the number one prospect. I told y'all that. You draft gurus. Y'all were like, oh no,
Caleb Williams is going to pan out. You're jumping to a little bit of a conclusion there.
One guy's in NFL MVP conversations. The other is not.
I'm not saying that Caleb Williams is going to end up being better in the long term. I'm just saying that he's going to be up there with Jaden Daniels as one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL eventually.
All right, you want me to get Oregon's fans mad at us to start the show?
Do it.
Dan Lanning, you need to come to the New Orleans Saints. We have an opening. You need to come to the New Orleans Saints, okay? Come down.
No one wants that terrible job, Blake. The cap situation sucks. Derek Carr's contract is a shit show. No one wants to touch that. Dan Lanning, stay at Oregon. Don't let Blake's obviously not going to talk into it, but don't do it.
Daniel Jones, bitch. Okay.
My team sucks. Don't come to New York either.
Okay. Anyway, this is the offer that I'm going to make Dan Lanning as a Saints fan. You ready?
Okay. You gonna cook him dinner
gumbo for life. Free gumbo for life. I will every time that this man wants gumbo, I will be his gumbo man. I'll also say this. Free crawfish for life if Dan Lanning comes to the Saints.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really enticing for Dan Lanning.
Have you ever had a bowl of crawfish bowl in Louisiana?
I have not, and I told
you have no idea. But you know why? Because I came to New York. You have yet to come down to the great state of Louisiana.
Well, to be fair, your trip to New York was paid for, so there's a little bit of a difference.
I went to work,
and I promise I'm gonna. I know we were there for work. Maybe I'll come for the spring game. Maybe that would make sense, and then the fall we can navigate next fall. I'll be there eventually. We're gonna make it happen.
Spring would you can get some good crawfish in spring, I guess. So yeah, maybe we can do that. All right, let's get moving. Everyone, do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all those groups. If you're on Facebook, to all of those social media pages, you're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Congratulations, good friend. Over 11,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you all so much. If you haven't done so already, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell wherever you guys listen to podcasts. Rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, we do have some super chats off in here. Elks says, happy Thursday from Dublin, Ireland.
I was wondering where he was when he commented that it was going to be midnight, and my guess was going to be London or Dublin, but appreciate the super chat as always, Elks.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he hated you because of how much trash you were talking about
Ohio State and Will Howard. Yeah. Everyone thinks I hate them. I had a lot of South Carolina fans that are mad at me today. That's a separate issue.
Okay, so I've been very busy today. Mm-hmm. I have not gone in that chat. I am super excited to go off in those comments and check it out.
They are not happy with me. And then on top of that, it's now there's some spillover on Twitter. I keep getting people commenting on my stuff like last time. So I told you, don't do it, man. Don't do it. Like I'm not going to just glaze a fan base because I'm afraid of their fans getting mad at me and commenting on my shit. Like,
fair enough.
All
right. Cody McGee says most head coaches in college does not make it in the NFL. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Chip Kelly, Matt Rule.
The only ones that typically work are the ones that have long-standing ties to the NFL. Like Jed Fish, I bet would work in the NFL. If he does well at Washington in the next couple of years, I would bet he's probably going to get calls to the NFL before he gets calls to jump to a bigger program. But no, there's a reason why it doesn't work. There's just such differences. And if you don't have experience in the NFL and know how to navigate it, it doesn't pan out.
The only thing with Saban is that the owner told him that he couldn't have Drew Brees in that free agency run, and he went to the Saints. So it's ironic, Joe. The Saints fans get to have Drew Brees, but could you imagine if you're LSU what you could have had in the SEC if Nick Saban would have stayed in the NFL?
It's a good point. It's a very good point.
I literally think about that once a week. I literally think about it. Elks also says with a $2 super chat says, tried my first Guinness in Dublin, 2 thumbs up.
I've heard that the Guinness in Dublin is like insanely different and so much better. I'm still kicking myself. My whole family went to that Notre Dame Navy game last year. I didn't go because of work, and I deeply regret it, mostly for that reason. Enjoy the Guinness, though, Alex. Appreciate the super chat.
I got to be honest with you, man. Ever since I have stopped drinking, I don't miss it at all. I really, really, really don't. I mean, it's just like, hey, man, I don't really need this. Let's, it is what it is.
That's
all right.
fair. No, it makes sense. I get that.
I mean, I have a glass of wine with my wife every now and then. But anyway. All right, let's get rolling. Joe, let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline. We come back and give you our Week 12 power rankings. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. All right. So let's get to it here. Our Week 12 power rankings, my man. Who are your top 10 in order?
Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, and I guess we're Texas haters now. I just feel like we keep finding reasons to knock them. I don't like them at 3, but there they are. They're at number 3. Number 4, Ole Miss. Number 5, Tennessee. 6, Penn State. 7, Georgia. 8, Notre Dame. 9, Miami. 10, Alabama. I took Indiana out because I had to. I don't want to hear it. We're not talking about Indiana because they're not in there.
So just so everybody knows, I don't get to see your power rankings before we come in here and do this segment. So I had no idea that Indiana was not going to be in your top 10. I'm so proud of you. I am
no,
so
stop. Don't. It's not like it's a deliberate, oh, you know what? I'm out on Indiana. I had to take somebody out because 2 new teams entered the conversation. Ole Miss and Alabama entered the conversation. And I've been getting grilled by people that I know personally for what I was saying last night on that rankings reaction video that we did, because I was glazing the shit out of the SEC way more than I should be. I still think that Indiana is a viable, great team, and we're going to find out how close they play against Ohio State, how good they can be. But I think that with the circumstance of last weekend, I had to make the change.
Joe, here's the thing with me and with Indiana. Let's go on the field, okay? You played – the most physical team that you played this year has been Michigan. I know Michigan's having a bad year. It's still the most physical team, in my humble opinion, that you've played. And you couldn't separate. And there were times up front that you got pushed around. You're right about Ohio State, right? 1,000%. But as I've been saying about Indiana for all these weeks, Joe, I mean, Michigan is who they are who they are. If they had a quarterback, this game's not close, in my humble opinion, considering what they did in the trenches. I got to be real with you, man. I see all of these teams, right there. Like what was Indiana was going to be the 5 or 6 seed, right? I mean, like they were up there high in the playoff ranking. I just don't think that they're number 1 deserving. And number 2, Joe, this is my thing with me with Indiana. I know that they have blown everybody out, and they've won. I cannot blame them for that. They are the college football Cinderella story in the Big Ten. Everybody wants them to win because they're an underdog. The problem is that I can see Ole Miss's front. I can see Bama. I can see Georgia. I can see all of these teams. And just because those teams lose doesn't mean anything for me. I also have them out there. But let me get to my top 10 here, Joe. It's honestly the exact same. There's no differences that you and I have.
You have mine still up. There you go.
Still doesn't change anything. The only thing that I have different than you is that I have Alabama at 7 I have Alabama at 7 and Notre Dame at 10 here. That's pretty much the only difference. So I kick it off over to you. Your thoughts on or where you want to go or take this first?
Yeah, I want to have a conversation about Ole Miss and Tennessee. And essentially, what do we think on who would win that matchup if they were to square off head-to-head? Because
Ole Miss for me.
Okay, so that answers my question, and that's why I've got Ole Miss ahead of them in my current ranking. And this is less of a debate, more of a conversation. I know that we always jump into these segments with the intention to argue here a little bit, but I think the version of Ole Miss that we saw against Georgia is a top 5 team in the country. And there's a reason why they had so much hype coming into the year. If they hadn't lost that freaking Kentucky game, and ifs are useless in the world of college football, but if they had not, the way that we'd be perceiving them would be so much differently. And what they did against Georgia is a very dominant well-roundedness. Their offensive line, we're still uncertain on it if they can match up in a game where they're, going up with a front that is like Tennessee's that could give them fits. But their passing attack was clicking, their run game was clicking, and their pass rush took over the football game. That version is certainly a top 5 team. And I'd argue they could potentially beat a team like Texas if they faced off on a neutral field.
So here is where I am with Ole Miss. I'm with you in reference to, Joe, why you have them above Tennessee. However, the Kentucky loss is still there. The LSU loss is still there. And for everything that it's worth with Tennessee, I mean, Joe, they had a pretty convincing win in a second half domination, which is really what it was against Alabama. And when I look at Ole Miss, I mean, the Georgia game is a very big win, and I can't take that away from them. It is, okay? But I'm splitting hairs on Tennessee and Ole Miss here. The second loss, unfortunately for Ole Miss, for me here, is the deciding factor, okay? Because what if Tennessee upset or beats? Well, it would be an upset. They're an 8-point dog, okay? If Tennessee upsets Georgia here, then what? I mean, again, we come in here every week and we talk about this. I'm about what's happened through 12 weeks, not what I think is going to happen in the future. That's not how our power rankings can or should or will work, because the games still have to be played. If we're fighting over semantics in reference to Ole Miss, who I think is trending, and Joe, great teams start peaking in November, and that is what Ole Miss is doing, right? I still think that Ole Miss is one of the top tier teams in the country, even with the 2 losses. But, Joe, I look at Ole Miss here, too. They trailed for 2 minutes against Kentucky. They trailed for no minutes in regulation on LSU. None. They had led that entire game. So, look, it just comes down simply for me that Tennessee does not have that second loss. And if there is a second loss that comes for Tennessee this week, obviously they'll be down. But I got to tell you something, man. I don't really know if I'm Ole Miss if I don't want to move that much in these rankings or power rankings, because, Joe, they're perfectly placed where they are at the current moment. If you looked at the bracket last night, they would have started off with Penn State, who, by the way, they beat in a bowl game last year, and then the second round they would have had BYU. So if I'm Ole Miss, I'm like, look, we're going to win out. I don't want to get to an SEC championship game. Let's just get to a home playoff game or away playoff game and go from there. Joe, I got to be real with you. I mean, Ole Miss, for what it's worth, could run the table if they're put in a favorable bracket situation. The only problem with Ole Miss, for me, Joe, is both teams have really good defenses, but one team can run the football more effectively, and that's Tennessee, okay? When Ole Miss has had struggles, it's when teams have had better secondaries that slow down their passing game offensively, and when they've needed to line up and run the football, they haven't been able to. Now, that's also because Trey Harris has not been available for them either. So what does the insertion of Trey Harris do for Ole Miss that's already peaking, but he is out, right? Like, he's been out. So I don't really know the outright status of Trey Harris. You want to put him at 4, I put him at 5. I'm not going to fight you over it. And I know you said this is more of a debate or conversation.
Yeah, conversation than a debate.
But again, if you're asking me why I put him, if I'm going to fight over semantics, it's going to be that loss. And because if it came down to it, I don't know if Ole Miss can consistently run the football.
I want to bring this up on a tangential point. The way that the playoff committee constructs their bracket is not similar to the way that we do these power rankings, because we're trying to argue who's the best teams, who do we think would win head-to-head, and so forth. I think that Ole Miss would be, maybe they're not the most deserving at the current moment because of their resume, but they would be the most competitive 5 seed. They would be the best team, in my opinion, to put at that 5 seed, to put up the most competitive potential run that they could string together. They would beat Boise State. They would beat the brakes off of them if they got that matchup between them and Boise State. And then that 4 seed matchup would be against BYU, or it would be against Miami. And I had argued that Ole Miss, the way that they're structured defensively, is built to win both of those football games, or at least keep things close with Miami if they don't outscore them. I think that Ole Miss, there could be an argument there. It's not going to come to fruition, but if I were making that decision and I were making that pick, that's what I would do.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, again, just depends on where you put them, right? I mean, like, again, I would not want to be at that 5 seed, though. I mean, you want to consider them where they are right now, taking on Penn State and BYU. Hey, man, leave me be. Leave me be. Let everybody beat everybody up. I want to stay at 11. We'll go on the road and play Penn State. We think we can beat them. And then we got to play BYU. Joe, if I'm Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, I'm like, look, we've done what we needed to do. Guys, let's win these next couple of games, get out of here, and let's go home. That's what I'd be saying if I'm Lane Kiffin. Joe, you brought up something I just want to throw down here. Both of us have Texas at number 3. We can go there. I mean, I guess. Joe, you're right. I don't like having Texas at 3, but this is a power ranking, okay? I think that there are a lot of teams on this list that are better than Texas.
I agree. It's really confusing with Texas because, and I hate to say this, and it's going to come off as disingenuous, but they have all these dominant wins against the crappy teams on their schedule, and the way that they played so sloppily against Georgia.
Sloppily?
I definitely made that word. How sloppy they played against Georgia really makes it hard to accurately project what they would be like in the playoff and in these situations. Are they deserving of being in the playoff picture? Are they deserving of being top 10?
Sure.
1,000%. But I just feel a little off putting them at 3. And I try to come up with an argument for like, who else can I put there? And Ole Miss at 3 would have been way too much for me to push them up that far. I just don't know what to do with them, man. They look great against the likes of Oklahoma and Florida, but what the heck are they going to do when they play Texas A&M? I don't have a certain answer to that.
Here's the thing, too. Now, I know that they play Arkansas this week, and that game's on the road. Joe, think about this. Outside of Georgia, there's a strong likelihood that Texas won't play a team with a winning record.
Wait, outside of Georgia and Texas A&M, you said?
Well, yeah, outside of you're right, A&M, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Outside of Georgia and Texas A&M, there's literally the other 10 teams, all of those teams have a strong likelihood of not being over 500. So there comes a part where, okay, you won by 3 against the 25-ranked Vandy. You get beat by Georgia. I mean, Oklahoma was ranked at the time that they played them, but Oklahoma is not a good football team. You're at Arkansas this week. You have Kentucky and then at Texas A&M. Joe, I mean, look, if they're 10-2 and their losses are to A&M and to Georgia, then what? Then what? Because then you have a win. Then you have all these wins, and you're saying they're blowing teams out. Yeah, they are. No, they're not, because it was a 28-13 game against Mississippi State with 5 minutes left to go. I'm looking at the box score right here.
Like, Arch was in too, so
I don't give two Rudy Poos who's in. You win by 3 on the road against Vandy. Like,
but they won by 31 against Oklahoma.
Joe,
and then the rest of their schedule. I know, but I'm just saying that
SEC opponent. They're not a real SEC opponent, and you know that.
But and look, I'm not arguing with against you here. What I'm agreeing with you because their resume, this is not resume based. Again, to be perfectly clear, this is an eye test discussion to Texas listeners that might get mad about this. I just don't know what game that I can look at and say this is their dominant performance that translates to them being the third best team in the country. I don't know what that is. Their ranking and them getting into the playoff field is what I complained about yesterday, which was the fact that the committee values quality losses over quality wins. That's the world that we live in.
You say that until South Carolina is above LSU. You say that until there was one in the Big Ten, guys. Help me in the chat. I forget. You say that, Joe, but you have these teams in head-to-head matchups that are above teams that have beat them. Like, I think it was maybe 13 and 14. I mean,
that's not what I'm saying, though. I'm saying that, like, Texas is placed where they are because they've got a really good loss, not because they have a really good win.
If Tennessee,
Penn State's put where they are, same thing.
Georgia this week, then it's not, the loss continues to get worse, Joe. You're not going to say here. Can I give you a hot take?
Okay.
If they lose to A&M in a couple of weeks, here's a hot take for you. I think that there are 9-3 teams more deserving in the SEC to get in a playoff situation over Texas.
Okay. I don't disagree with that.
I mean, look at the teams that they played and look at the teams that you've played. I mean, like, Joe, if there's a situation, like, let me give you an example, okay? Let's say that the A&M beat you and you're 10-2. Let's say A&M loses in an SEC championship game. I mean, I know that you have the head-to-head and all that kind of stuff, but when it comes down to it, like, they have played cake during their entire schedule. They don't deserve to be there at 3. I'm just saying. I don't.
Yeah, we put them there. That's the only thing that's like so.
Yeah, but what are we going to do?
I know there's no one else to put there at the current moment.
Well, we could have put a lot of teams there. We're getting influenced by the outside media here. All right, where do you want to go next here, Joe?
You want to talk about the confusing situation with Georgia and like what the heck happens with Georgia now?
All right, so you have Georgia at 7. I have Georgia at 8. Let's get to Georgia.
A lot of this is going to change, I think, based on how Georgia plays against Tennessee. There's the uncertainty with Nico's health and availability for this upcoming weekend. There's a lot of room right now for Georgia to like reestablish themselves. And I don't know how much I'm going to push them up after how they play against Tennessee. But if they win handily, like, are we going to go back to supporting them? Are we going to go back? Like, if they cover the 10-point spread that we're talking about here that's projected for them, are we just going to go back to saying that this Georgia team's great? Their issues that they have on offense, I just don't know, like, what that means for them down the line. Are they fraudulent? Is that how you would frame it? Like, I just don't know how to put it.
Well, you would have to move them up in yours because you have Tennessee at 5, and both teams would be 2-2.
Right.
I think you would have to put them above Penn State. You'd have to put them above Alabama. They'd still be in the top 5, top 6. I mean, I don't know what – I mean, wanting to like cast Georgia aside here is asinine to me in a lot of ways.
That's my point.
Because, like, if they beat Tennessee this week, well, they have a win that Alabama does not have. They don't. They also don't have a win, quite honestly, that Penn State has, that Tennessee has, literally because it's Tennessee. I mean, I'm trying to think about Ole Miss would be ahead of them because you have a head-to-head situation. Here's the thing with the SEC, and you got worked over yesterday about glazing the SEC. You're not wrong about the SEC. Joe, there's no way that you can legitimately, outside of Oregon, look at Ohio State and Penn State or Indiana and tell yourselves, oh, well, you know what? They have one loss, so they deserve to be where they are. The problem with that is very easy to me. Joe, Georgia has played more ranked teams in the last month than Indiana and Ohio State combined. So when I look at a team like Georgia and we're saying it's just a 2-loss thing, well, who are they playing and where are they playing them at? They're playing them on the road. They're playing them in Oxford. You get to go to play a Rudy Poo Nebraska team that just fired their OC, and Dana Holgerson's coming in.
Okay. So first of all, I don't want to go into the Big Ten SEC debate.
Well,
somebody pointed out
that's the debate you have to have here.
Somebody pointed out to me that argument isn't super valid because LSU lost to USC at the beginning of the year, and USC is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten right now.
But Georgia hasn't played LSU.
I know. I'm just saying that just generally the Big Ten, the back end, I don't want to get back into that argument. The back end of the Big Ten is very competitive and a lot more competitive than people realize. They beat up on each other, so none of their records are very good. But to what you're talking about, though, I think that there is a lot of truth to what you're saying with Georgia and how the rest of the season projects. I think that there is a lot of.
Did Brian tell you that?
No, it was actually I noticed a commenter pointed that out. Somebody, just a random commenter, somebody pointed that out, and I was like, "Shit, how did I not think of that last night when I was arguing with Blake?" Thank you to that random commenter. I should have given their name and to give them credit. What I was saying though is that our doubts in Georgia feel like they're going to be short-lived for a brief period of time because of what happens with this Tennessee game. I have faith that they're going to win the football game, considering, again, how banged up Tennessee is, and their resume and their on-field performance will be reflective enough of them being worthy of being back in the top 5. And I'd feel pretty comfortable, even with a bad performance, if Penn State and Georgia played, if you had a bad performance from Carson Beck, I would still take Georgia to win that football game. Will Howard didn't play great against Penn State, and they still won that game because their defense took over and got stops in the red zone. Georgia is better than a number of these teams in the top, and especially they're better than Texas because they beat Texas. Georgia right now is the most confusing team to talk about because there's just all these weird interweaving lines that get crossed with who they've beaten and who they've lost to now that they lost to Ole Miss.
So we're getting called the P word inside the chat. So I'm just going to throw this out here to Citizen, whatever your name is. You're probably 5'8" and no one likes you, so you might want to shut up. So the second thing is, okay, I look at I hate the argument, like legitimately hate the argument. Oh, well, they got 2 losses and wins are the only thing that matters. It's not the only thing that matters. It's not. It simply isn't. Okay, because you can't tell me that a loss to Ole Miss is a dogfight with Nebraska and that's even. It's not even, Joe. It's not remotely close to being even. You know that, and I know that. You watch the games. Everybody knows that. If you have a mind, like if you have a brain, you know that that's true.
Yeah.
So you're not wrong there. In reference to Georgia, here's the thing, though, Joe. I agree with you on a lot of their points. If they can't find ways to run the football here, I don't give a shit what they're going to do. They're going to continue to get beat. So better figure something out. All right. You want to move on to these picks here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So week 12 picks are upon us. Look what we have here.
No victory lap.
What we have here.
You already took your victory lap. I don't want to hear it.
I'm going to take it again here. Blake is 82-28 and Joe is 76-34. Yes, indeed. Gonna give myself a round of applause.
You can't give yourself a round of applause. That's bullshit. That's ridiculous. That is.
I'm the one with the buttons behind the mic. I can do whatever I want. But I'm just gonna say a convincing lead is starting to be taking hold here. So hopefully.
Okay.
Did you really, for Baylor and West Virginia, put I'm not picking West Virginia?
I told you, whatever you texted me, I'm putting on the graphic. So you better give me a real pick next time.
Oh God, this is so great. That's so great. I couldn't believe you were gonna do that.
Yeah.
All right, let's start off here. Georgia and Tennessee, Joe, both of us taking the dogs.
Uncertainty with Nico's situation. There's different sources on if he's playing or he's not playing. It's confusing as hell, but he's going to be coming into the game banged up. You also have Dylan Sampson banged up from last game. The most critical part with all of this, the season's on the line. This Georgia team is not as good as it's been during its national championship runs, but it's not bad enough to be removed from the playoff picture with a loss at home to Tennessee. It's just not. I will be stunned, and I think there's a reason why most experts are picking an agreement with us. I would be stunned if they lost this game, because then it would really be a sign of something going on with this Georgia program, that they're dealing with issues, and I don't think that's the case.
I would not be stunned at all, because the same way that they've been getting beat is Carson Beck being bad and turning the ball over. It would not surprise me at all if they lost this game. But this is an interesting thing. Name a more intensified game in Athens than this one, because their fans have been wanting a whole game for a while that had some really big implications. I think that because of that, even because I do think Nico's going to play, because of that, Joe, that's why I'm going with Georgia. I know that both teams have a lot of flaws. I think both teams are pretty much even in a lot of directions, in a lot of ways. I'm just going to go with the home team and take the dogs. Texas and Arkansas, Joe, I got to admit, I almost took Arkansas here in an upset, but I'm rolling with the Longhorns.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that possibility for there to be an upset because of how gravely important that rivalry is to Arkansas. We had some Texas fans that were commenting that they didn't consider them a rival, but Arkansas does. Arkansas does, and if anything,
Arkansas
that might
fans in there, they were like, "We want this one. We want this one." I'm
right.
like,
That's what leads to an upset, when one team doesn't even look at you as a challenger, and the other one's got nothing to lose, and they've got this explosive run game that if you can't keep up with them, that they could sneak away with a win. But Texas, you're right. They are dominant against teams that have significant weaknesses, and I think that they're going to be able to put up some pretty big points in this one.
The pass defense, I can't get past with Arkansas. That was the deciding factor with me about picking an upset here. Here's the problem. Georgia can't run the football, though, and I know that Arkansas can. I think this one's going to be a close one. I'm going to take Texas to eke it out small. To the guys.
I don't think it's going to be that close.
It's going to be close. As the man who's got the lead in these games right now, you must listen to your boy. It's going to be closer than the experts think here. All right, Colorado and Utah, both of us going with the Buffaloes.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why Colorado wouldn't win this game. And also, we had Colorado fans. I don't know why, we pick you guys and we say that you're going to kick the crap out of your opponent, and then we spend a couple of minutes on okay, here's where some things could go wrong. It's a part of the preview. We're not picking against you. Colorado is going to win this football game. They are too explosive for Utah with the injuries that they've dealt with. Rotating quarterback, or not rotating quarterbacks, but musical chairs at quarterback, and the uncertainty just overall with the direction of this team. Colorado is built to kick the crap out of this Utah program.
Dude, I'm so with you. Every time we pick them, it's like, hey, they're 132nd out of 130 teams running the football.
We're not allowed to bring that up?
We're not, right. Joe, they are second to last out of 133 teams in running the football. If a more physical team can line up and bust you in the mouth, which, by the way, Utah's secondary does not suck. Okay, let's get that through our minds right now. It does not suck. We have seen more physical football teams whoop up on teams this year. Joe, I do agree. Colorado has a lot of athleticism. If Utah stays around here early and they start you know how I think about this game of how it could go? North Dakota State. They got a North Dakota State them.
Yeah, that's plausible.
Got a Nebraska them, right? Be more physical. Take it to them and see what happens, but I'm still going to take the Buffs here. Oregon and Wisconsin, both of us going with the Ducks.
Yeah, we've never doubted Oregon in games like this where they're playing against a middling team in the Big Ten. And speaking on a team that's dealing with their own lack of identity, they've got their own problems in their program with Jack Del Rio and all that crap. That's a distraction.
Does that really affect the players, though?
Yeah, I would say so. If you've got somebody who's around the program and then something like that happens, I'd say that's an unnecessary distraction.
So when I'm sitting at practice lined up across a defensive lineman, I'm not thinking, man, I can't believe Coach Del Rio got a DUI this week.
Well, I'm not. It doesn't seep in like that, but it's like damn, the season's not going that well, and now this happens. People are laughing at us. All I'm saying, though, is Oregon, they rolled against Maryland. They rolled against Michigan. They rolled against Michigan State, Illinois. Wisconsin's not much better than any of those teams. They're going to be able to kick their ass.
I humbly agree with you in this one. I don't think Wisconsin's got any personnel that's going to be able to overcome Oregon. You have two USCs on here, and South Carolina.
South Carolina doesn't fit when I type it out, and I don't want to shrink
Okay.
it, so it's just easier to do USC.
All right, sounds good. South Carolina versus Mizzou. Both of us going with South Carolina. Joe, here's your chance to redeem yourself and get back in the good graces of South Carolina.
That's not going to happen. They hate me. It's not going to happen, Blake. I could say the nicest thing. I just saw a comment. I clicked over and I saw a comment that said, is Joe trying to rage bait us because it's working? I was arguing with you, and they think I'm like attacking them. It's the weirdest fan base because they just don't. They take everything so personally, and it's so frustrating. What I was gonna say though with this game, I'm sorry, South Carolina fans, if you think that I hate you. I wish it wasn't the case.
He does.
They are. Stop it. They are so much more physically dominant along the line of scrimmage on defense compared to Missouri's offensive line. I think this game is going to be exactly like the Oklahoma game.
If Brady Cook does play, if Brady Cook's available to go, this game can be closer than what we're talking about and what we've been talking about all week. Because I have no idea of his status or what's happening there, even if he was playing, I do think that South Carolina is kind of hitting a little bit of a peak here. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. Like, Joe, man, I mean, that was actually what started the argument last week or this week. So I just think that they're too good defensively, and Missouri's not going to be able to move the football on them. So give me South Carolina. Clemson and Pitt, both of us going with the Tigers.
Yeah, I think that Pitt was a paper tiger. Get it? Get it? Because they're playing Clemson. Pitt was a paper tiger, though. They were not as competitive.
Bad pun there. Bad dad pun.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. They were not as competitive as we thought that they were. I, of course, always support Coach Narduzzi because he's a former Rhody Ram football player. They don't have enough, I think, offensively in this game, and I don't think that they're built enough up front in their offensive line to slow down that Clemson front, so I'm going with Clemson.
I agree. I think Pitt is fraudulent. I think their secondary is very, very, very bad, arguably the worst in the ACC, even with the 5 picks on Kyle McCord. That should go ahead and justify you, Joe, on all your Kyle McCord slander. But with that being said, I'm going with Clemson. Still have a little bit of life left in the tank there, them in the ACC. Kansas State and Arizona State. Joe, this one hurts me a little. I really wanted to go Arizona State here, but my mind just would not allow me to do it. I'm going with the Wildcats in Kansas State here.
I was super close going with Arizona State because Cam Scatterbo is supposed to play. I think that there is a possibility that they could pull out that upset, but I didn't want to get too risky here. I think that Kansas State, their front, is going to be able to have enough success. You know what? Screw it. I need to get back in this thing. Give me Arizona State. Cam Scatterbo's playing. Give me Arizona State.
Okay, then
I need to get back in this.
And I'm taking Arizona State to block you.
What? No, come on. You can't do that. That's a dick thing to do. You picked. You're just doing that to cause problems here. That's why you're doing that. You're not doing that because you know what? In the pick.
Payback's a bitch because you did the exact same thing to me a year ago. You would literally come to the show and start changing picks. Yes, you did.
You always change picks. You would text me on Saturdays and change your pick. I don't want to hear that. You're the one who's always changed. I never changed my picks last year.
All right, you're going with Arizona State.
Yeah,
I'll let you. I will let you. I will allow you to get a little bit closer so you don't look as bad. So I'm going to roll and stay with Kansas State. By the way, every time you do this and you flip on me, you've been losing. This is how the separation starts. You come to the show, you convince yourself. I really do hope Arizona State does win, though, with Coach Dillingham. There's another one that we disagree with here. Southern Cal versus Nebraska. I'm going with USC. You're going with Nebraska.
I'm hoping that the Dana Holgorsen adjustment here is enough. And I'm putting a lot of faith in that. I have a feeling, and I'm hoping that Raiola can have one of his bigger games. Speaking of distractions, we didn't talk about this, but the coaching violations for USC. I think that that's a coaching distraction for the coaching staff, not the roster, but for the coaching staff. And I think that that certainly could leak into this game.
I don't think the Dana Holgorsen thing's going to be as big as you think it is. That was another argument we got in this week.
Yeah.
They literally come from the same tree. They literally were on the same staff with one another with Mike Leach. If there's anybody that knows Dana Holgorsen better than Dana Holgorsen, it's Lincoln. Like literally. So I understand what you're trying to say here, but Joe, I can't do it. I see a Nebraska team that literally cannot run the football in moments. I get it. It's USC. I get it, and I don't have a lot of faith in this pick either. My gut is just telling me to go with USC for whatever reason here. Notre Dame. Let's skip Notre Dame and Virginia because we're about to do a preview of them. Baylor, but we're both going with Notre Dame. Baylor and West Virginia. I'm going with Baylor, and so are you. I will never pick for West Virginia again.
See, you have such a vendetta against West Virginia, and the West Virginia stinks because they're gone. They're out of the equation. So
well,
you and I literally did the same thing.
They benched Garrett Green, though. By the way, you know this.
I know.
Okay,
but you and I literally did the same exact thing. The same exact thing happened where we got a fan base pissed off at us for the way that we've talked about them over the past year, and because South Carolina is doing well, they're coming at me. And now you're the good guy in this situation, but we're never going to hear from the West Virginia fans because they suck.
Well, no, I mean, my take was correct. Garrett Green does stink. So I was just right. Either way, Dave Aranda is a close friend of the program. In no form or fashion will anybody on Ruffino and Joe show ever pick against Dave Aranda.
I think outside of what you just said, I've got no ties to Dave Aranda, so I've got no reason to support him. However,
he loves Ruffino and Joe show. You better.
Okay. I support Coach Aranda because he has picked himself up off the mat, and this team has been hot. They have been hot, and I can't go against the hot hand.
Dave. It's the glasses he's been wearing on the sidelines. He looks like Professor X from X-Men.
I didn't even notice.
He looks like Charles Xavier.
Oh my God.
All right. Let's wrap it up here. Joe, we got one more preview we want to do, and that's Notre Dame and Virginia. Joe, let's dive into it. Your thoughts on the Irish versus the Cavaliers here.
Look, I'm not going to try and sell this as an upset opportunity. It's just more so a game that I think is important to talk in the playoff picture. Notre Dame doesn't have a lot of tough matchups left. This is one of their few remaining tough matchups. They are in a spot coming off of a game.
A tough matchup, by the way.
It's not really. It obviously isn't in comparison to all the other games that all these other teams and other conferences are playing. Notre Dame's schedule is so soft as it is that this is one of the fewer ones that actually look tough circumstantially. UVA is coming off of the big win that they just had against Pitt. They were able to pull that out against a ranked Pitt team that people were still piping up and saying had some potential. For Notre Dame fans, the one thing that you need to be aware of, Anthony Calandria, their starting quarterback, is a very good player. He's very inconsistent. He throws a lot of picks, but he also makes a lot of big plays. That's the biggest thing for me. All I'm going to say here, and I say it every week, you got to win handedly. You can't have one of these games on the resume in these final weeks with all these other teams that are stacking ranked wins and to have a 7-point win against Virginia at home in the final weeks of the season. You got to win this thing by 20 plus points, which I think is what the spread is.
Joe, I got to be real with you. They're not, if they win this game, if they win out, they're in no way humanly possible are they taking out Notre Dame. There's no way.
I don't disagree with that, but I think that you can't, I'm just trying to paint this picture that you can't mess around. Like, you can't leave an inch of doubt. Like, because right now there's a decent argument in support of Notre Dame by the committee saying that, like, one, eyeballs, and then two, they're dominating everybody that they're playing.
You better hope that A&M wins out, and you better hope they win the SEC.
I don't think they need them to win the SEC.
Well, I mean, Joe, they're going to be a 3-loss team. I mean, if they lose in the SEC championship game, I mean, there is a still likely scenario that we have Texas and Texas A&M in back-to-back weeks. That's still a likely scenario. So you're going to need them to split. Okay. The bottom line here is, I don't believe I see Notre Dame fans talking about this all the time. Oh, we need to win convincingly. No, you don't. I hate that argument. I really do. You're going to get in because you got the Golden Dome on the side of your head. Now, in reference to the game, Joe, this is the third time out of the last 4 weeks Notre Dame has faced a team in their secondary that's 100th or worse in passing yards allowed. They're not getting tested in their biggest weakness offensively. They simply just are not. So again, I think Riley Leonard I'm on repeat every week when we talk about Notre Dame and their games. You're going to be able to throw the ball enough. You're not going to get tested in the secondary enough. Your wide receivers are going to get able to get separation, which is going to give you the ability to run the football, which, by the way, you've been really good running the football this year. You're still 12th in the country in rushing offense. Joe, I mean, it's not – I see where you're coming from. Like, Virginia's been decent in moments. I mean, look, you look at how they've been able to, stop the run has been one thing that they've been really good against. I mean, passing, they've been better. You talked about their quarterback in Calandria that turns the ball over a lot. He'll definitely turn the ball over against Notre Dame a lot if he keeps making bad decisions. It's just not a test for me.
It's not. It shouldn't be painted as a test. I think you brought up like one thing before we close out here. It has really sucked that like Notre Dame has not had a legitimate challenge for their passing attack since the Texas A&M game. Joe, and they're not going to get one. They're not going to get one against Army. They're not going to get one against USC.
Well, they've changed. They put in a new safety and another corner. Oh, by the way, they got a new slot guy. So even then when you got tested, you really didn't get tested, right? I mean, like,
I would really like to know how good this Notre Dame receiving core is, this passing attack could be, and they have shown some signs of positivity, but that's because they're going up against some really, really porous groups that they've been able to exploit.
Joe, as God is my witness, I am not trolling. In the name of Catholic Irish Jesus, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, amen. You're going to play a team in the playoff that can stop the run and do it religiously. That team might be Ole Miss. It might be Tennessee. And then you're going to get tested by their secondaries, and it's going to get ugly. Listen, I'm not trying to be – I'm being dead-ass serious. You better start finding ways to get the ball down the field.
Yeah.
Regardless of how you do it, because there are teams that we've seen, whether it be Ole Miss, Joe, I'm going to throw them out there. You're going to laugh at me. Indiana still top 2 in run defense, even though we talk about them every week, not really playing anybody. I mean, like, there are teams that can stop the best thing that you do. And my God, if Riley Leonard's got to throw the football for you to win a football game, you're not built that way. So, again, it's not – Joe, you know how I feel about with Notre Dame right now? My Miami take, right? Like I said, listen, if you keep playing with teams close, you're going to lose. The translation in that meaning is when you finally face a team that can stop the run and you're putting it all on Riley Leonard's shoulders, there's going to be an issue.
I don't completely agree with that because I just don't think there's any evidence to prove that we don't know for certain that they can't be a better passing offense.
Can you do me a favor before we get out of here? What is NIU in run defense? I don't know off the top of my head. No, listen, I'm being dead serious. I'm pretty sure they're top 10. Can we look this up really quickly? Hold on.
I got to jump to something right now, so I don't have time to
okay, hold on. Stay with me. Don't you dare leave me, Joe. It's right here. I got it right here. Hold on, Joe. It's right here. NIU and run defense. Oh, Joe. No, they're not top 10.
They're MAC team. It doesn't matter.
They're top 10 in run offense. All right. We'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one. Peace.